And as Christians, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy things, because we have an economy, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have nice things, but you should be wise, and you should beware. Okay, let's keep reading here. 2 more verses in Philippians 4, verse 18 now. Okay, so what I desire is more credited to your account, right? Okay, so I have received full payment and have more than enough. Like I've got plenty. I'm amply supplied. I love that word enough, by the way. It's sufficient. It's enough. Now that I've received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent. So Epaphroditus came from the church in Philippi, delivered him some gifts. They are a fragrant, what's the word? Offering, not donation. They're not a donation. They're an offering, you see. An acceptable, listen to the language, how this would sound to a Jew. An acceptable what? Sacrifice, pleasing to God. You see, typically people respond to a need and then they give. However, God calls us to something different. And if we miss this, we kind of miss the central point in being generous as Christians. Fragrant offering, acceptable sacrifice. This is the language of worship. Of worship. The word worship, it literally means to bow down, to surrender. And to a Jew, whenever they heard the word worship, you know what they would think? Sacrifice, offering. You and I, we hear worship, and what do we think? Singing. And it's wonderful to sing. I think more accurately that would be exalting God, lifting up the name of God. But worship is a different word. Worshiping is surrender and it is sacrifice. It is always surrender and it is sacrifice. It is surrender, it is sacrifice. It is declaring, God, you come first. God, you are above me. That's surrender. You are over me. And sacrifice, God, you are worthy, as Carmen often reminds us. He is worthy. Surrender and sacrifice. So point number 3 is this. The primary purpose of giving rightly is to worship God. So what am I saying? Let's just carry this out to its logical conclusion. The Christian who goes to church week after week after week and gives nothing to God, his purposes, his plan, his mission, is not worshiping God. They must have idols because everybody worships, but they're not worshiping God because we can't worship God. Worship means to surrender and to sacrifice, to give an offering. That is what it literally means. And that's the primary purpose of giving. And don't forget it. All right? Last verse here, verse 19. And my God, he finishes. So he's so personal. Like the God I know, the God who's provided, the God who's performed miracles, the God with a master plan, the God I love and adore, right, will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. Here's the last big thought. Giving faithfully is a way that we discover whether or not we actually, remember that word from last week, actually, whether or not we actually trust God. See, in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus says this. This is how you should pray. He's like teaching his disciples. Not what you should pray, but how you should pray. And one of the things he says is, give us this day, anybody remember this? Our what? Our daily bread. Now, how often, when's the last time you prayed that prayer? Because I just go to Safeway. When I need bread, when I need food, I just go to, it's in my cupboard. Let's look at the date. Oh, it's one day. Okay, I need to go to Safeway and get a fresh loaf or whatever. And this is what we do. I'm rarely honestly, I don't think I'm in a posture of trusting God to give me bread. And we have to be careful here because before long we become self-reliant and self-dependent and begin to deceive ourselves thinking I got it. Friends, one of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways that you can actually know if you trust God is if you are a generous giver. You literally release, and you're like, okay, Lord, now whatever you want to do. And Paul just said, you know what my God's going to do? He's going to provide for all your needs. He's going to take care of you. Don't look at your lack. Look at his abundance. God is trustworthy. God does provide. He doesn't give us everything we want, but he provides enough. And that's what Paul is encouraging them. He's like, I know you're giving out of your poverty and out of your affliction, but I just want you to know God's going to keep taking care of you. You know, it's interesting because there is a connection between generosity and giving and happiness. And Paul actually addresses that quite bluntly in another text in Acts chapter 20. I'm just going to read this one verse, Acts chapter 20, verse 35. And he's giving his farewell message to the church leaders in Ephesus, the Ephesian elders. Anyway, here's one of the things he says. In everything I, Paul, did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, what kind of work? Hard work. We must help the weak, remembering the words of the Lord Jesus himself said. It is more blessed to what? To give than to receive. Any guesses what that Greek word blessed actually is? Because I do have a Greek New Testament. It's makarios. In other words, you're happier if you give than if you get. And don't we experience that? I mean, once you're a little bit mature, past childhood, and, and it's Christmas time, are you more excited about the gifts you're about to receive as a 38-year-old career person or mom or dad, whatever? Or are you more excited about the gifts you've given to your spouse, you've given to your kids? It actually is better. It's happier to give than to receive. It just takes a little bit of maturity. That's it. And to know Christ and to understand that he is the greatest giver and we will never surpass his generosity toward us. It is more blessed to give than to receive. This is why every Christmas you ask your grandparents, maybe you have grandparents that love Jesus and hey, what do you want, Grandma? What do you want, grandfather or whatever? And your grandma says, I want some hand lotion, because it's what you get them every year. And that's what I got my Nana every year, hand lotion. She has so much hand lotion. And because it's just easy. And your grandfather's like, oh, get me a tie or whatever, a shirt or something like that, And are they saying that because they're like, man, I just really needed a tie. I need some hand lotion so bad. I cannot wait for Christmas to open up that gift. Hand lotion. No, it's literally just the first thing they can think about. It's they're literally saying, I don't care, but I want to give you the opportunity of experiencing the joy of giving. But every grandparent loves, whether it's a gift card or a gift that's wrapped or whatever, they love giving gifts and watching the people they love open them up if they have an ounce of maturity. Jesus is actually not trying to trick us. It's the truth. It's better, it's happier, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Question. Joel, I get it, but how do we do that? Because I'm teaching this under the assumption that every devoted follower of Jesus actually wants to be a generous person. and actually wants to be able to give. And we're like, man, it would be so great to win the lottery so I could just like give, you know? It'd be so great if I had this because then I could just give. If I just earn like 10% more, then I could give. And then we earn 10% more. And sometimes we don't give. But I'm operating under the assumption that we want to be generous toward God. I'll say it. What I mean by that is his purposes, okay? So here's I'm going to map out this plan for you. Ready? Number one, esteem doing excellent work. You guys, work is good. Did you know that God called Adam to work in the garden before the fall? Remember that? The fall just made work hard. You know, right? The sweat and thorns, and it's going to be difficult now, right? But before the fall, he said, Adam, you got work to do. You got to tend this garden. You got to take care of it and stuff. You see, God created us to be productive, did he not? Like, we want to be doing things as long as we health. I promise you, those who lack health, they wish they could go outside and pressure wash. You guys, I love pressure washing. When I'm 80 years old, I'm going to start a pressure washing business. I'm going to go door to door with my little pressure washer. Can I pressure wash? No, get out of here. I'm still pressure washing. You know, I mean, I love doing that, right? And don't you love being productive and seeing work accomplished and seeing this sense of like, because God made us to be productive. You guys, work is good. Not all of you love your jobs, but you know what? You're providing for your family. And you're providing in ways to meet the needs of others. And you're providing maybe a service for the community or the nation or the world or whatever you're doing. Work is good. And I want you to know that. And I also want Christians, let's esteem doing excellent work. What do I mean by that? Let's do our best. Let's not be lazy. Let's show up on time. Let's get stuff done. Let's be irreplaceable at our place of employment. Now, part of the reason I'm saying this is like, if you're that kind of employer or employee, is your employer going to want to fire you? No, they're going to keep you around. And guess what that often means? Now, not all the times, and I get every career is different or whatever, disclaimer. But you get the point. A lot of employers then would love, you know, at the right time or whatever, give you a promotion, give you a salary raise, give you more time off, whatever it is, because they value the good and excellent work you do. And I think that should mark Christians, actually. I think we don't need to be like the smartest or the most talented or whatever, but we ought to be people who give our best. And even Carmen, like with the worship team up here, he's like, dude, you guys got to know your parts. You got to practice during the week. You got to show. This isn't like, all right, it's American Idol time and just wing it, you know, and this is going to be good. No. There's sacrifice involved in worship. There's effort put into it. And it's good. All right, enough of that. All right, that's a whole nother message. But esteem doing excellent work. Number two, establish lifestyle and spending boundaries. Boundaries. What's a boundary? It's a limit. It's a limit. Essentially what I'm saying is figure out where your enough is. Determine where your enough. I know this is not how the world operates, okay? But this ought to be how Christians operate. It should be clear that even though we could drive that, or we could live there, or we could do this or that, we choose not to. We could stay at the 5-star resort, but you know what? I'm going to slum it at the 4-star instead. And I would say, fine, that's great, right? But just establish your enough. You know what that's called? It's called contentment. Paul writes, godliness with contentment is great. Does anybody know how it ends? Is great gain. Godliness with contentment. Are you content? Until you are content, you will never be a generous person. You will always see others as people to use, people to take from, people to give you an opportunity, to make your life better, right? See, it's all about, you know, your heart. Establish what is enough. I have friends of mine, you know, very, very wealthy. They've never lived in a gated community. You would never know, really, by their lifestyle that they have as much wealth as they do. They give tremendous amounts of resource to God and his kingdom and his purposes, and they're not doing it begrudgingly. They love it. They really enjoy this privilege. Most people aren't wired like that, you guys. And you don't need to be wealthy to have that mindset. You just say, you know what? This is enough. This last week, I was spending time with, I got to see my parents, but also got to see my son and his family. And he's got a little bit less than a year of chiropractic school left. And his wife is working full-time. My son also works part-time. Nonetheless, life is busy. They have a granddaughter. It's full, right? And they live in this like elderly lady's daylight basement situation, you know, and it's low ceilings and stuff, but it works great for them, and the price is right, you know. You guys remember that early in your marriage? You know, maybe you had that kind of situation, right? And I told them, you guys, understand something. I've had plenty of people tell me later in life, after they could afford the big home and the fancy cars and the awesome trips, they look back and they cherish those early years of marriage. When they didn't have much, they had to trust the Lord. They had to be faithful with what they had and just live. And I will tell you, my son and his family, they're happy as can be. And they're not going to be happier to have, I'm not saying they shouldn't own their own home or whatever, but I'm just saying that mindset is really, really important, and it's good. You've got to establish you're enough. Otherwise, life has a way of, I just need more, I need more. Oh, Lord, I'd love to give, but I can't now. I have nothing to give.